Tigers are completely blanked in this one by the Guardians. Not the start to the series any of us had in mind. Tanner Bibee absolutely shuts the Tigers down. But hey, some reinforcements on the way. A little update on Matt Vierling, Wenzel Perez, and of course, Parker Meadows. And we'll also look ahead to the rest of the series. That's all coming up next. So buckle up, come along. It's Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Woof. Isn't baseball just the strangest game of all time? I mean, yesterday we were talking about this Tigers team in a 4-2 road trip and a resounding win over a really good team in the St. Louis Cardinals. And today we're talking about getting shut out by the Cleveland Guardians. So welcome into Locked On Tigers. I am your host, Jake Riepma. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake_Riepma. Thanks as always for making this your first listen each and every day, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. And of course, free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Shout out to the everydayers, those that tune in to the Locked On Tigers podcast and the Locked On Tigers postcast, our instant reaction show that you can catch right here on Locked On Tigers immediately following the final out, because we've got you covered on Locked On Tigers. What a show we've got lined up for you. The fact that the Tigers were as outmanned, maybe that's too much to say, more like just dominated by Tanner Bibee and that Guardians pitching staff and Cade Smith, which we'll talk about. And then we'll also look ahead to the rest of the series as well as the upcoming reinforcements that should be on the way. So an update on that as well. Thanks as always for your comments. Appreciate everybody that has continued to tune into the show as we move along here. I want to send my best to the host of the Locked On Tigers podcast, Scott Bentley. Appreciate him and the opportunity to pinch hit for him. And again, appreciate the comments that came in last couple of episodes. I wasn't begging for, the positive reinforcements or seeking approval or anything like that. I just wanted to point out that, hey, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the Detroit Tigers and on Locked On Tigers. And I think Scott does an incredible job. And I just wanted to reiterate that because I don't know if I did a adequate job of that at the beginning. So all that to say, hey, this Detroit Tigers team, what the heck happened on Thursday night against the Cleveland Guardians? The weather was terrible. And other than a little bit of life in that bottom half of the eighth inning, there was really nothing to even cheer about. I mean, if you were at the game, I almost feel like you deserve a refund. But as I said in the post game, the fact of the matter is, over the course of 162 games, you're going to have some duds. And we used to do a segment called the Studs and Duds of portion of the program. And last night was just everything was a dud. Everything. I mean, there's no other way to put it. And unfortunately, it's a lasting image that's kind of burned into your mind until the next game is played. And the fortunate part of it, so I said unfortunately, now it's the fortunate part, is that this is a 4-game series and the Tigers have 3 more opportunities. Hopefully it won't take that long. Hopefully they'll be able to get right into it on tonight's game on Friday night against the Cleveland Guardians and avenge that loss. And then eventually, of course, go for a little 3 out of 4 action. And I know that's greedy. But hey, Tigers still the best team in baseball. So let's go over what went wrong and how the Tigers can avoid that moving forward. I mean, it was one of those games where it had the feel of a pitcher's duel at the beginning portion of the contest. First couple of innings, no score for either team until the Guardians struck for 2 in that 4th inning. It was a slider that just got too much of the plate. And, Santana, the veteran that he is, gosh, he's been around forever. Carlos Santana. I can remember watching him in single-A baseball. He was a prospect for the LA Dodgers because he played in my hometown, Midland, Michigan, home of the Great Lakes Loons. And I remember watching Carlos Santana as a member of the Great Lakes Loons. And here he is still raking in the bigs all these years later. So that found the alley up in right center, scored 2 runs. And as the score indicates, when it's a final of 7-0, that's all the Guardians really need. But I felt like those 2 runs were a little bit deflating, especially when the opposition is throwing 7 different kinds of smoke the way Bibee was. I mean, he goes 7 scoreless. It just really was a night where there was no chance for this Tigers team. It was an off night. And that being said, the bottom of the 8th, where the Tigers get the bases loaded, nobody out. And it felt like the Guards were reeling a little bit, because you've got the bullpen in there with Heron pitching, and he doesn't even record an out. He gives up the 2 hits. He had the walk, and the bases are loaded. And in waltzes Cade Smith, and you talk about a reliever coming in and slamming the door shut in emphatic fashion. That's what this was. Make no mistake about it. You get the strikeout of Akil Baddoo, which, by the way, this is not being negative. This is not being critical, any of the other terms. I'm not stirring anything up. I would love your comments on this, though. I just don't love the move to go to Akil Baddoo. And maybe that's my own, I don't want to say, I mean, it's not personal. I just don't think Akil Baddoo's any good. I never have. It was a cute story, the Rule 5 draft and everything, however many years ago that was, but it's ran its course. And I know he made some great defensive plays in Toronto not too long ago, but he's not an everyday player. He's not a clutch player. He's not a guy you bring in that situation to pinch hit. Listen, I know Zach McKinstry then struck out and Riley Green, and I can be just as critical of those 2 for striking out in a big spot as I can Akil Baddoo, but that felt like over managing and understanding the matchups. I get it, understanding the left, right, the splits and everything else, but I am just when you already have I'll call it this. Listen, and right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm at least acknowledging what it is. I have a preconceived biased against Akil Baddoo because I just feel like that chapter has closed, and we got to have better options than Akil Baddoo pinch hitting with the bases loaded and nobody out. Now, that said, Zach McKinstry, really tough night for him because he also had that critical error. And again, I would say the game was pretty much in the balance before that error, but that 4-run inning for the Guards in the 9th was largely because of that lapse in focus from Zach McKinstry. That's all it was. I mean, he just took his eye off the ball receiving the throw to third. And I know it's not a traditional first baseman that does that every single ground ball, but you and I could have caught that ball. I mean, I mean that. I truly mean that. Look it all the way in, catch it, and you got the force out at third. But again, the Guardian pitching was so good tonight that it didn't matter the amount of the deficit, because this Tigers team was not putting up any runs tonight, and the shutout is obviously indicative of that. Now let's talk a little Jack Flaherty, because and I'm curious your comments. Your comments are always welcome, because that started to get a little bit spicy on the post-game show immediately following the game, where did we make a mistake in bringing Jack Flaherty back? Did the Dodgers know something? Because he's 2-6 on the season, but tonight he was much, much better. I guess when you're hearing this, it would be last night. 6 2/3, 3 earned runs on just 3 hits. You're going to win a lot of games with that pitching stat. You're going to win a lot of games if your starter gives you 6 2/3 and only allows 3 earned runs. He struck out 8. He did walk 3, but this was an effective outing for Jack Flaherty. He just did not get any help. And I know win-loss is very, very low in terms of ways to evaluate a pitcher, but that being said, it's starting to get a little bit concerning that there's been this amount of data this long into the season where we just haven't seen vintage Jack Flaherty. We haven't seen the Jack Flaherty that we saw last year. Now, I want to congratulate him on his 1,000th career strikeout. That's pretty cool. Of those 8 that he had tonight, that gets him over the 1,000 threshold, which is awesome. You love to see that for Jack Flaherty. But he threw 108 pitches as well, which is something that should be noted, because it was only Shane Gunther and Brebbia that pitched after Flaherty was removed in the 7th inning, after he had gotten the first 2 outs of that 7th inning. So even though the Tigers lost today, they didn't tax the bullpen. They didn't put themselves in a vulnerable spot for the remainder of the series. And that's probably my biggest takeaway. And I'd be curious who else has that takeaway, that even though the Tigers took one on the chin tonight, there's no reason this team can't come back and win 3 series. And that's not false hope or propaganda or anything. We've seen it from this team. This team does not fall into losing streaks. It doesn't fall into funks the way the monotonous nature of a baseball season can sometimes promote. The dog days of summer are a real thing. Obviously, we haven't gotten there yet, but just playing every single day and the grueling nature of a Major League Baseball schedule, it can be easy to fall into those skids that last multiple games, that last 5 games, 6 games, so on and so forth. And the Tigers just haven't done that. In fact, they've only lost 2 games in a row since that sweep at the beginning of the season to the Dodgers 3 different times. So that's not a lot of times considering where we are at this point in the season, May 23rd on your calendar, if you're keeping track at home. So I do feel confident in that sense that, hey, even though last night 7-0, not great, rinse and let's get back to it. And maybe very similar to what happened just last series on the road against the Cardinals. Get your teeth kicked in the opening game of the series, and then you find a way to storm back and take control of the series by playing good baseball and doing what this team does best. So I fully anticipate seeing that. Hey, let's talk a little Wenzel Perez, Parker Meadows, and of course, Matt Vierling when we come back. Don't go anywhere. It's the Locked On Tigers podcast. This episode of the Locked On Tigers podcast is brought to you by Supply House. You get the supplies you need. You got to get the supplies you need from the site that's made for the skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product information to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service. So you'll always talk to a real person. That's probably my favorite part. This is off script, but it's real. I love talking to people. It's so much better when you have the ability to talk to a real person instead of the recorded line. We all can agree with that. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line. Let me say that one again because it's important. Free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. So join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM. That's supplyhouse.com/TM. Supplyhouse.com/TM, and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Use promo code SH5, that's SH5, for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order at supplyhouse.com. And we're cruising right along on the Locked On Tigers podcast. Thanks, as always, for tuning in. Hopefully, this Detroit Tigers team will find a way to turn it around. And I think we all know the perfect recipe for that. A little bit of Parker Meadows, a little bit of Wenzel Perez, and, of course, a little bit of Matt Vierling. Now, here's the update on them from Evan Petzel, who does such a great job covering this Detroit Tigers team, who noted that these guys played and were flown to Florida to play. So that's important to note. Also, and I meant to mention this on the postcast show, which my apologies for not, but it's live. You do it live. Gleyber Torres leaving the game with a lower right leg discomfort. Let's hope it's not anything major. He came up a little bit ginger after the swing in the early portion of the game. So that would be a huge loss if Gleyber Torres is unable to, or if he's needing to miss some extended time. Now, depending on when you're hearing this, maybe something has come out about the severity of it or what the diagnosis. I don't know. I don't pretend to be a well-educated person, a medical expert. Maybe somebody can comment what I'm trying to articulate, but let's hope that it's not anything serious for Gleyber Torres, because he means so much to this team, and him missing extended time would not be good. That is for sure. So Parker Meadows, you got Matt Vierling, you got why am I blanking? Wenzel Perez. My apologies. They're playing, or they played, I should say, in they played in Lakeland, Florida, the low single A affiliate for the Detroit Tigers, because of the weather issues that were going on in Toledo. So just wanted to get them some game action, and there is some hope that we'll be seeing them sooner rather than later. And I think I can speak for everybody. That's going to be such a welcome sight when they're back in the lineup, because the lineup, and yesterday's a great example, shut out by the Guardians. It could use a little infusion of life, a little shot of offensive prowess from one of those guys, not to mention seeing Parker Meadows glide effortlessly through center field is just a sight to behold. And I certainly look forward to that, because make no mistake about it, that's a guy that can do things on a baseball field few defenders can do. He covers so much ground, and so on and so forth. As for Vierling, it'll be interesting to see where he's slotted in and how AJ Hinch elects to use him. We know one thing about AJ Hinch. He loves a good strategic mind game, and really throwing curveballs, both literally and figuratively, at the opposition, and basically inventing new lineups in his sleep. I'm sure that's what he dreams about on his drive back to Birmingham, of how can I throw a loop into tomorrow's lineup. And I say that half jokingly, of course, tongue in cheek, but at the same time, he's just a brilliant manager when it comes to all that. So let's hope Gleyber Torres, his injury isn't serious. Let's hope that Parker Meadows, Wenzel Perez, and Matt Vierling are back this weekend. And that continues to be a part of the story from the team, the baseball team that has the best record in the American League and in all of the MLB for that matter. So yes, tonight was a step back, and yes, the 7-0 getting your teeth kicked in certainly does not feel good against the Cleveland Guardians, but I think we can all agree it's going to happen from time to time. Now, that being said, it was the first of many against a divisional opponent like the Cleveland Guardians, so plenty of opportunities to avenge that, and it starts later tonight, and we'll have a preview of that matchup next on the Locked On Tigers podcast. Locked On Tigers podcast, looking ahead to the matchup tonight. Jackson Jobe. Tigers haven't lost with him in the lineup, which is just crazy to say. I mean, I know that set all kinds of Tigers firsts and pitching your first 8 games and the team not losing, which is just incredible, which I wanted to bring this up, and we'll get more into the preview in a second here. I'd love your comments on this as well. The notion last night, there was a couple of really bad missed calls. We talked about the 3 strikeouts in the bottom of the 8th inning that Cade Smith got. Riley Green got behind, and that's not an excuse for the strikeout. Don't take it that way, but is worth noting. He got way behind in the at-bat because of the wrong call, the check swing, in which, in my opinion, the horizontal arc of the bat did not cross the vertical plane of the plate. That's the definition of a swinging strike, by the way. You can use that one at a later time. The horizontal arc of the bat must cross the vertical plane of the plate. I'm sure some baseball expert in the comments is going to tell me why and how I'm wrong and further explain it. But point being, Riley Green got robbed on that at-bat, and Benetti was talking about implementing, or the implementation of robot umps and how important accuracy is, and still having, because of course the argument is always, oh, you want the human element. We want keep the human element in the game. And I get that. We all get that. But at the same time, the human element can stay in the game while you still have the pinpoint accuracy of the robot ump. So I'm curious to see. I don't think it's a matter of if. I do think it's a matter of when the robot umps will be implemented. I know there was the experimental process throughout spring training, which was interesting to see and still could become a thing. But at the same time, until like doubting Thomas in the Bible says, I got to see it to believe it. But until I see the robot umps, we'll just continue having these conversations about missed calls. I thought the umpiring last night was really, really bad. And I see that up on my board now that I meant to get to that sooner. Brutal umpiring. Brutal umpiring. All right. That being said, what more do we have to get to on the Locked On Tigers podcast? The other thing that popped into my head, I don't know why this is a note, but when you got the little sticky note here, and then I've got my other notes over here. I'm going to try and get to them as much as I can. And that was the fact that it's still, and I'm so sorry I'm saying this, but this is just a quick peek into my crazy brain, that the curly fry giveaway from Arby still only being 3 runs. And I'm sure that's been discussed at some point on one of these shows. And I'm sure I've said it before, but that just seems like way too low of a bar to be given away curly fries. I mean, I think you should have to earn it with at least 5 runs. I mean, is Arby's losing money on this? Are they in jeopardy of folding as a franchise because Tiger fans are just getting free curly fries almost every game? They didn't after this game because the Tigers lost 7-0. But that's my attempt at humor after a 7-0 loss. And as we look ahead to the matchup, Jackson Jobe on the mound for the Detroit Tigers. Tigers have not lost with him on the mound, which are all things you love to see, because even though this is just the second game of the 4-game series, I think we've been spoiled, and that's a good thing. But for the Cleveland Guardians, Slade Cassoni on the mound. What a name, Slade. Do we like that name, Slade? He's 0-1 with 5.40 ERA, whereas Jackson Jobe 4-0. And I know I talked about this with the record of Jack Flaherty, that a record isn't everything for a big league pitcher. But at the same time, I mean, 4-0, Tigers are 8-0 in games that he's pitched. You love to see that. Casey Mize update. Going to need him to get back sooner rather than later. And the last I read, it could be this weekend as well. So ramping that up. And just need this team to get healthy, because they've just, unfortunately, they haven't had that catastrophic injury blow. They've just tinkered on little injuries here, little injuries there, and it's starting to weigh a little bit. Obviously, Reese Olson, a little less than a week ago in Toronto, that's all on the table as well. So hoping they can figure it out and get back on healthy terms. So all that to say, hey, it's a pleasure being on the Locked On Tigers podcast with you. And thanks so much for all of your support throughout this week. I've enjoyed doing both the post-game show as well as the daily show on the deep dive. I have not spoken with Scott about his timeline on returning to the lineup, so to speak. We're talking about reinforcements on the way. That's a perfect segue into the future of the Locked On Tigers podcast. But make no mistake about it, the Tigers are the best team in baseball. We're going to continue to cover them, and that's why we thank you for making the Locked On Tigers podcast your first listen each and every day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on YouTube. Now, for your second listen, you got to check out the Locked On MLB Game Night. This is an awesome show, guys. Not going to lie. Had the opportunity to be a part of it for a little bit. Didn't work out with the schedule, with my radio gigs and contracts and things of that nature, but that's A-okay, because the Locked On Game Night, Locked On MLB Game Night, it's every single game, every single night, covered by Locked On experts. It's awesome if you haven't checked it out, because they go locally to everyone that were covering those games. They get quick 30-second to 1 minute recap hits, and then they discuss the games at length. So it's the best of both worlds. You get the national perspective as well as the deep dive. So if you're looking for a little more MLB action in your life, you got to check out the Locked On MLB Game Night. All right, Tigers and Guardians later tonight, Comerica Park. Let's hope the weather's a little bit better. Let's hope the offense is a little bit better. Let's hope the pitching is a little bit better, even though the pitching was not really to blame until the very end there where the Guards put up 7 runs. But that's in ancient history. It's in the past, my friends. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's always a pleasure, and we'll talk to you next time on Locked On Tigers. Oh, make sure you like and subscribe.
How about that timing?